Promises, promises, promises. You know, people make promises all the time. I remember when we were having some problems with our cable a few weeks ago. We called the company, and they said they would come look at it and take care of it. And they promised that they would be there between 8 and 12. And when they got there at 4, they started fixing the problem. People make promises all the time. And most people make promises fully intending to keep them. You know, they don't make a promise with the expectation of, well, you know, if I decide I want to do something else, I don't have to do it, or if it doesn't work out, it's okay. They make the promise fully intended and expecting to keep the promise, but sometimes as human beings we just fall short. I'm here today to tell you that God has made some promises, and He's always kept them. I'm here to tell you this morning that God is a God of promises and a God of kept promises. If you want to know what I'm talking about and what I believe and what I think and what I know to be true, I want you to think about this. Ezekiel. God had promised His people that He would bring them back together, that He would make them whole again. And He makes this promise in Ezekiel, the 36th chapter. And at the beginning of Ezekiel chapter 37, He takes Ezekiel to this valley. And as he stands at the crest of the hill overlooking this valley, he says, "What do you see?" And Ezekiel says, "I see a valley full of dry bones." You know, I've wondered before, why was it a point to be made that the bones were dry? I think the point was being made that the bones were dry because they had been there for a long time. And any evidence or trace of life that had been wrapped around these bones or in these bones was no longer there. They were dry. They were useless. They were done for. And God does an interesting thing at this point. He asks the question of Ezekiel, "Son of man, can these bones live?" Can these bones live? What a loaded question. These bones that are dead, that they were once viable people, now they are just a pile of rubbish. They lay in this valley. There's no hope of any kind of anything, really. And God asked the question of Ezekiel, can these bones live? Over the last month, we've been talking about spring, really. And the whole promise of spring. Have you ever wondered why Easter was in the spring? Why it was chosen to celebrate the resurrection during this time of the year? I think it has a lot to do with the things that we've been talking about this month, about the idea of renewal, to renew, to revive, to rethink, and today to resurrect. There's a reason for spring. It makes us think of new life, a new opportunity, and a new way of thinking, a new way of living, a new way of doing things. It's an awesome time of year. But these bones, back to these bones, they're dry, they're very dry. There's no life, no skin, no muscle, no flesh, no blood, not even marrow within the bone. Son of man, can these bones live? Ezekiel has a smart answer. Lord, you alone know that. You alone know whether or not these bones can live, and I'll just put that in your hands. And then something amazing happens. God decides that he's going to breathe life back into these bones. But he doesn't just do it and let Ezekiel watch. He makes Ezekiel be a part of it. He breathes life back into these bones through the words of Ezekiel. He stands there and he says, here's what you're going to do. You're going to prophesy to these bones. And you're going to say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life, and I will attach tendons to you, and I will make flesh come upon you, and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord. So Ezekiel says, so I prophesied and did exactly as I was commanded. And as I was prophesying, there was a noise. A rattling sound. And bones began to come together. Bone to bone. As he stood there and watched, tendons began to rattle. Muscle began to form. Skin began to cover that muscle. Suddenly, what was dead was now brought back to life. Almost. See, it says in verse 8, I looked at the tendons and the flesh appeared on them, and the skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. Then he said to me, prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, son of man, and say to it, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe into these slain that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath entered them, and they came to life and stood on their feet, a vast army. I don't know about you, but at this point, I'm totally and completely freaked out. Okay? I don't know what to think. I don't know what to do. Because just a few minutes ago, I was staring at a pile of old dirty bones. And after a few words that were given to me from the Lord, there's a vast army standing before me. I am freaking out if I'm Ezekiel. I am out of my mind. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Then he said to me, verse 11, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say, our bones are dried up and our hope is gone and we are cut off. Everything we had ever hoped for is gone. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, O my people, I'm going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live and settle in your own land. And then you will know that I am the Lord. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. There will be no doubt, that God has made this happen. There will be no doubt that God and God alone was in charge of this. Ezekiel, there's no doubt that Ezekiel's not in charge of it, because I'm sure when he goes back and starts talking to the people, he's not going, hey, guess what I did? Because he's probably still freaking out. He's like, you need to know what the Lord has done. And I am assured of his promise, and his promise to be kept. You see, he makes the promise, and he keeps the promise.